Julie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I think I'm gonna make it for old fat man. There you go, Jim Hutchinson. Is Jason around tonight?
Jason, you're muted.
You gotta unmute, Jace. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Got everybody now. All right, is
Am I
Sandra
echoing?
on? I didn't hear her voice. Tracy?
Tracy's here. Sandra, I think you're still muted.
I'm here.
Okay. So we're gonna call the meeting to order. We have all districts representing. If I could get each district commissioner could state their name and their location, please.
George D. Yancey, District 2. I'm located at my home at 16170 Cox Mill Road.
Jim Hutchison, District 5. I also am located at my home at 525 Harrison Court, Lake of the Woods, Locust Grove, Virginia.
Okay, District 3, Donald Brooks, Chair at 2150 Seminole Trail, Charlottesville, Virginia. Julie and Jason? Julie and Jason? I know y'all are out there because I heard you.
Can you hear me, Mr. Brooks?
Now I can hear you.
Jason Capel, District 1, and I'm calling from Speckled Trout Lane in Duck, North Carolina.
Nice.
Yeah, some of us get to be lucky, huh? Okay, Julie, are you there?
She's muted. Julie, you have to unmute.
Julie, you're still muted.
I'm gonna hold up a sign in a minute and say, Julie, unmute. Julie? All right, while she's trying to unmute, I think we also have Sandra Thornton on board and Tracy Newman from the county. We do have a quorum. I would ask that everybody would check to make sure they're unmuted when they're ready to speak and give it just a second to kind of kick in before you get started. This meeting is being held electronically pursuant to and in compliance with the continuity of government ordinance or an ordinance to effectuate changes in certain deadlines and to modify public meetings and public hearing practices, procedures to address continuity of operations associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. It was adopted April 28th, 2020 by the Orange County Board of Supervisors in accordance with Virginia Code 15.2-1413. This meeting is accessible by YouTube channel EM-LGRXYDFKCP18-JOQ. The meeting is conducted remotely and there will be no physical public access during this meeting and no opportunity for the public comment. We do have a quorum. Julie, are you back on with us?
Can you hear me?
I can now. So
Okay.
I've heard every district, so we are asking for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
District 1, seconds.
Moved by District 5, Jim Hutchison, second by Jason Capel, District 1. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposition? Agenda is approved. Does everybody have an opportunity to peruse the meeting minutes of August the 6th? If so, listen a motion to have those approved also.
So moved.
It's moved by
District-
District 5 Hutchinson,
District 1, second.
District 1, Mr. Capel, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Chair votes aye also.
Mr. Chairman, if I might interrupt just for a moment, this is easier than trying to email Larry Clement. I just saw an email flash on my screen from someone trying to connect to the live stream, and he indicated it's not working. So I don't know whether there's a bit of a delay, but I just wanted to alert Larry.
Okay, Larry, I'm assuming you got that because I know you're monitoring.
Yeah, yes, I did. And yes, I'm also monitoring it via my phone and a couple of computers in the office, and it is playing fine on all of those devices. So,
Okay, so it must be a problem with the person. And I hope they get it fixed. Thank you, Mrs. Thornton. New business, we want to go into the continuation of the preliminary plat review for Winterberry Creek. Everybody should have received a copy of all of that in their last meeting agenda. Sandra, you want to go first, or how do you want to handle this? You tell me.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we may have reviewed this briefly at the meeting a couple of weeks ago. This, as you know, is a preliminary plat that had been submitted under the ordinance that was in effect prior to April 25th, 2018. Various, the required agency reviews were accomplished. The applicant responded to those applications. We didn't get an answer from VDOT until May 7th of this year, concerning a proposal for addressing a second entrance to the subdivision. They had determined that from their perspective, that proposal was satisfactory. So after some consultation with the county's legal staff concerning whether this ordinance or this application could still be processed under the ordinance under which it was submitted, it is before you now.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Mrs. Thornton?
District 1, Jason Capel. Sandra, you'd sent me an email talking about the private road. Where did you see that note that you mentioned?
On the front, the cover page of the plat.
Okay.
um,
Is it under subdivision roads?
Under
Notes?
subdivision notes, I mean, there is a note about the roads being dedicated to private uses, but then when you look at the road cross sections, the design standards indicate that they are designing the roads to VDOT specifications.
But
There is
the cross section, the cross section says specifically public road cross section. And the letter, let me pull it up here. The letter from VDOT says that the road is not to VDOT standards and therefore must be private. So when I read, you've got an email here. Let me find it. So from Mark Woods, I guess, Mark
Mark Wood, yes.
Yeah, Mark Woods, in his email dated May 7th to Justin, it says that The emergency access entrance is an excellent idea. However, the section of Berry Creek Avenue between Route 613 and Cross Creek Lane will have to remain private as it does not meet public service requirements.
So perhaps we may need to get a clarification from Mark Wood.
Is Mark, is
I
he
guess
on the
I
line,
guess
or
when I
you're,
read that to mean it would have to be privately maintained, but not that it wouldn't be constructed to their specifications. So I
Well-
may need to get,
okay. Well, is Mr. Voorhees on too tonight?
I don't believe so.
I did not see him. The county
Okay.
attorney and,
Well-
Mr. Johnson is
just-
on.
And the
Go ahead.
applicant,
Yeah, well, just,
I believe the applicant is here also.
okay. Well, this is, I mean, part of this is county business, you know, that I want to bring these points up. So we have a housing subdivision. We have a piece of land that was purchased by a developer. You would assume that the developer knows their business. You would assume that they had time to look at the land. And we have a total of 4 waivers that the county's given for undue hardship. So we have, and Sandra, this was mostly before your time, so this was done by Josh. So we have the review of the sewer and water system. That review was waived, which I don't really understand because we all had concerns, particularly regarding the water. The cul-de-sac lengths, that section was waived because it doesn't conform to the subdivision ordinance. The cul-de-sac diameter requirement was waived, which we need to discuss a little bit because the language that Josh has in the letter doesn't exactly address the issue. And so I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And then they're also asking for a waiver for the second entrance, and which I assume was granted. And so, like, I don't understand how an entity that purchased the land for the purposes of developing, how they can then come and get hardship waivers. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And this last waiver on the public access, it's showing the emergency access, you know, for 109 homes. So 109 homes are going to have only one means of egress out of there unless there's an emergency and the main road's closed down, in which case they can use a private road, which is blocked at both ends by bollards. There's been no review of the maintenance agreement on that private road. There's been no review of, for instance, who has the key to the bollards, like if there is an emergency, like who removes the bollards. And I really don't understand the whole process. And so one other thing I want to point everyone's attention to is in the waiver letter that, let me find it here real quick. Give me just a moment here. So in the package from last week, there was a waiver request. Oh, it's here in my Adobe. Hold on a second. I'm looking in the wrong place. Here it is. Nope, wrong one. Give me just a moment. There's they've asked for a waiver on the diameter of the circles. And VDOT specifically said, have you gained approval from emergency management and the school system? Because the 60-foot diameter that they have in here isn't perceived to be adequate for school buses. And they've requested a waiver for what's called the right-of-way, the cul-de-sac right-of-way, which our ordinance requires 110 feet. And they've asked for a waiver to 90 square feet for the cul-de-sac right-of-way. But Josh's waiver note here doesn't mention a right-of-way diameter. It just says the cul-de-sac diameter. Now, I'm a little irritated, I'll admit, by, someone coming in and trying to get all these waivers. But from the county perspective, I mean, did anyone check this with emergency management and the schools on this 60-foot cul-de-sac? And the way I read this language is Josh didn't actually give the right-of-way waiver. He gave a waiver just for the cul-de-sac. So the way I read this is the cul-de-sac itself would still have to be 90 feet, not 60 feet. And there's a number of cul-de-sacs on here shown at 60 feet. So I'm just airing all that. I mean, there's a number of things that I think aren't answered on this. And the most prominent is the private road, because the county ordinance requires that the private road, if it serves more than 40 homes, to be built to VDOT standards. And it doesn't appear that the private road is being built to VDOT standards. And it also requires that the maintenance agreement be reviewed by the attorney, and I don't think that's happened. And then again, I'll just bring up the radius, the 60-foot radius for the cul-de-sacs. And then just one final note, moving forward, I don't understand why we're just giving all these waivers away. I really don't understand it at all. So I don't know where to go from here, but I'll pause there.
Yes, Julie, I'm sorry, Ms. Thornton, you need time to answer some of those questions at a later time, or can you answer those now? Do you want to go?
Well,
go ahead.
I can't answer the question concerning the interpretation of Mark Wood's email without having a conversation or, some sort of communication with him. So I can't do that tonight. I do have to say, I did not carefully review the waivers that had been previously granted. So I confess I have not read them as carefully as some of you all have.
I do have one, Mr. Chairman, may I ask one more question, please, of Mr. Lansing?
Yes,
He's online.
he's online.
He's on the phone right now, Jason.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Lansing, a question for you. When
Hey, Jason,
when
he
does
can't,
the-
Jason, he can't hear you.
He's talking on his cell phone to somebody else. He's muted out.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Yep. I'll pause then.
Hang on just a second. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments concerning Winterberry?
Yes, Mr. Chairman Brooks, this is George Yancey. I think I recall from our initial discussion and review of this application and request was we had three big concerns. One was a septic and water system that was adequate to handle 109 homes. The second element was a water source, which they had indicated initially was going to be RSA, but they then discovered that based on the hookup fees with Greene County to the development and the running of the lines from the development to the water tower was going to be cost prohibitive. The third thing I think we all were very, very concerned with, and Mr. Capel has hit on most of this, is the road system in this development has to be of the standards that we can get fire and rescue into and out of the subdivision, as well as the school bus system routes in there. I agree with Mr. Capel that what has been waived is not up to the standards that we normally require, and I'm not sure why they were done. Second of all, at this point, there are still a lot of questions left to be answered in reference to those three elements. It does appear they've gotten enough water source from the two wells that were drilled, which is great, but we have not seen the hydrological study that says, yeah, that's enough to service 109 homes.
Okay, any other commissioner? So I have a question for Sandra and Eric both, or Sandra or Eric, see who can help me here. On these preliminary plat reviews, how in depth are they supposed to be at this particular point?
Eric, do you want to take that or do you want me to speak first?
Sure. How about we both go? I have just I just gave a call to Tom, my boss, and raised up the concerns that Jason Capel has just pointed out. And his position is that the problems that Jason Capel has raised are legally sufficient to deny even for the preliminary plat review.
Okay, so the attorney's recommendation is that we just deny the preliminary plat review and let them reapply. Is that what you're saying?
That's assuming that that all of the points that Jason made are accurate. I will admit I have not weighed into this deeply enough to either confirm or deny what Jason is saying, but I certainly trust Jason's great competence in that regard.
Well, I can tell you that I've dove in it a little bit after Jason and I had a conversation about it, and he's on point. I mean, on what he's saying. The bigger question I had is, who gave the authority to waive all these things that's already in the ordinance that have to be done?
These are tough judgment calls, some of them. And one of those waivers was granted on my advice. Isn't that right, Sandra?
Well, just the last one about this related to the second entrance once we had VDOTs.
Right.
The others were done back in 2018.
Yeah. Sure. So I'll take ownership for those ones, but those arise from the hardship exemption, which we have talked about in the past. And I will admit that was a really tough judgment call, the hardship exemption. One that it was a tough judgment call. It wasn't an easy decision, but that one was by my advice.
I guess where I'm at.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
Well, I guess where I'm at, I really don't want to hurt the applicant in the sense of if the county has misled or encouraged or waived something that it's not there. But I would rather see this, as much as this is going against the grain of what I want to be doing here. I'm almost tempted to ask for us to move this to another meeting until we get some answers to those questions and sort some things out with the applicant before we just kill this plat review. Because if we kill it, they can't come back again until when?
I don't think that I don't believe with the subdivision plat, we have the same limitations for reapplication as we have for zoning matters.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I don't want that thinking. I want to know before we do it,
Right.
because if we do it and then we get hung, I'd rather table it, postpone it for a later time to find out for sure. 'Cause
Okay,
I
well,
don't know.
that'll take me a little look through the ordinance, which I can do if you want to go on to something else now. But I do want to ask Eric before I do that. Eric, would I still be looking at I'm assuming I'd still be looking at the prior ordinance?
Yeah, I
See-
mean, we did decide to go with that pre-2018 ordinance. For that.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
And I'm
Well-
looking right now as well.
Actually, I would rather for you all to stay on so we can move along. And I would ask the commissioners just to let us continue this till the next meeting. That's what I'd rather do.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Mike Deardain on behalf of the applicant. And we don't have an objection to deferring this, but it would be useful if we could understand what exactly the questions are, because I think that we as the applicant, in particular, Mr. Schimpf, who's been involved in this project since day one, has a lot of answers to them. For example, the roads do meet VDOT requirements. So I think we can answer these questions. We need to know what the questions are. And I think that, and we're probably in a better position to answer a lot of these questions, given the history with the project.
Well, and I'm inclined to agree with you. I'm going to just strongly suggest if I can get the commissions to continue this or table this for another meeting, that you work with Sandra, and she would certainly be able to tell you what we're looking for.
Thank you.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Concur.
So do we need a motion for that, Eric, or can we just consensus say we're gonna put it on the next agenda?
We do need a motion, and we'll also just need to be sure that we act on this with finality within 90 days. Isn't that right, Sandra?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we
Oh, yeah, from today, yeah.
Yeah, but we will need a motion.
so I would suggest then we just push it to our first meeting in September.
Which
Can I get a motion from the commissioner?
be September 3rd.
September the 3rd. Can I get a motion from one of the commissioners for that?
Mr. Chairman, real quick, I just want to very quickly, and I'll be happy to make that motion. But Mr. Lansing, I'm just curious what we spend a lot of time in these meetings, giving a lot of deference to companies who do development as a living. That's their business. And so why is it, how can a development company that in theory has done this and had their due diligence with their property, gave it a look, I don't understand why it's a tough decision that they have a hardship. I mean, are you saying that they made a mistake when they bought it and that's the hardship? Because
Yeah.
the features of the land were there. So because they bought it with one intent and got on site and realized they couldn't do it, now that's a hardship? Is that what you're saying?
Do you mind if I review an old email that I sent? Because this was a good while ago, so I'm gonna need to refresh myself on which waiver it was that I advised in favor of and what my reason.
Yeah. Well, sure, and we can have this discussion later on, but
Sure.
from a county perspective, I just struggle, listen, I'm not, picking on developers, but there is an idea that they know what they're doing.
Right.
I'm sorry that the land didn't flush out the way that they thought it would, but I don't understand why that means the county then has to waive their ordinance requirements. I mean, I'm a lot more sympathetic to, say, a farmer who's had the land for a long time and the zoning's changed while he's owned it, and now it's created a hardship. But for really what amounts to, I'll just say it, prospecting, I don't have a lot of I mean, it doesn't seem like a hard decision to me, but we can talk about it later, and maybe there's just a broader discussion about how these things happen and how the planning commission gets notified. And one final question, when would we have been notified of this last waiver? And for instance, when would we have been notified that waiver was given? Was that when we received the letter at the last meeting?
I think that's a question for Sandra. Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would, when it was coming to you for review, I think that's when I provided the information.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there wasn't a waiver of the VDOT entrance requirements. VDOT said that the second entrance satisfied their requirements. So
but sir, with all due respect, you're not in the planning commission, and it's a county requirement. So the fact that the VDOT waived it doesn't really, I mean, the county requires the second entrance in the ordinance.
Well,
so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to again call for that motion to kind of move us along, because we could go back and forth.
I'll make a motion to defer, Mr. Chairman, to the next meeting.
September the 3rd.
I raised the question, Chairman Brooks.
Yes.
Is 2 weeks an adequate period of time for this to be resolved or come to some conclusion? To me, that's
Based on
pushing
what I heard, the applicant said that he thought he had all the answers already.
Okay. Well, I don't know about the other commissioners, but I am getting to the point that kicking the tire down the road is not the answer to the solution.
I'm not in disagreement with you, but can I get a second to this motion?
Already seconded. Hutch.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposition?
Aye.
George, okay. Continue this to September the 3rd. At that meeting, we asked that everybody come as prepared as they possibly can. That's to include the county and the applicant. So we cannot continue to do this. Next, we have the public hearing and the continuation of SUP 20-02. Are we prepared to go forward with that tonight, Mrs. Thornton?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I had indicated that in the memo that I sent out earlier today that I still do not believe that we have sufficient information to render an adequate staff review and draft conditions that might be applied to this special use permit. I know that the applicant is prepared with another presentation for you this evening. I have not had very much time to look through it, but I have glanced over it, and I think there is still some new information. But of course, there hasn't been time for me to really evaluate that and assess conditions at this point. Potential conditions.
Am I hearing you saying that you don't feel the application is complete and that's why you can't move forward at this time?
Well, I would say that, I mean, as this process has moved forward, I think the initial application was not thorough enough for us to evaluate. It did meet our general submission requirements. But I think we, just given the complexities largely associated with the fact that the proposed project areas is in 2 counties, I think those complexities make this a little bit more difficult to evaluate, especially because the larger portion of the project area is currently under the jurisdiction of Spotsylvania County. I'm not able to tell from the last concept plan that we received, where some of the proposed development would be, particularly related to some of the amenities. And given the fact that some of the amenities that have been discussed would not be allowed in Orange's agricultural district, and I don't know how that affects the proposal.
Okay. Fellow commissioners, do you have any comments or questions for Mrs. Thornton? And then after you finish that, I'll tell you what my thought process is.
Chairman Brooks, this is George Yancey, District 2, which this project is located in. I think Mrs. Thornton has been extremely kind to the applicant in terms of the content of the information provided, or the lack of content. There are so many questions. There have been some excellent points of contention submitted by people via email in the response to the public comment opportunity. At this point, I feel that we don't have anything to work with at this point. So therefore, I would like to make the motion that we deny this SUP tonight.
Is there a second on that motion?
District 1 will second it.
Been moved and second, we deny this application tonight. All in favor with that, say aye, but let's do it by roll call as we do for SUPs. Mrs. Thornton, if you're voting for the denial, just say aye. If you're not voting for the denial, say nay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sir, could we just have a little discussion about the application? Just before we take a vote?
Sure, just a little.
Yeah, just a little bit. Mr. Yancey hit it on the head, and I brought this up previously, that there's just not enough information, and some of the things just simply aren't allowed in the ag district. I don't see any way you can do a fueling station in the ag district. You can't do it by right, you can't do it by special use permit, and you sure as heck can't do it as an accessory use to another use. Same is true with the retail store, which the ag district only allows 4,000 square feet or less. And so we have no idea how big these campsite stores are. So there's a tremendous amount of information missing, and I honestly don't feel like this should have ever even been brought up as an application at this time. I just don't understand why we're even reviewing it, because it just isn't complete enough to review. And so that's all I wanted to say.
I know that this is not open to applicant yet, but could we ask to spend more time working with staff and table this before we have a vote? It seems there's a lot of questions out there that we would like to correct.
Hello, hold on. Before you speak, please announce who you are and let the chair recognize you before you just go in. Hang tight, the commissioner is speaking now. The applicant did make their presentation last time, and we did receive those answers, and we did receive the public comment. So the procedure is that when the commission comes back in session, they can do one of several things. One of those things they're doing now is entertaining a motion to either approve it or deny it. So, but I'm going to make just vary from this just a little bit and ask whoever was speaking to give me 90 seconds or less what you were saying.
Hi, my name is Gary Griffith. I represent the developer and the property owner. First, the property owner hired us to work with them. We presented our application and our desires. Then we've been constantly reading letters and looking at how we can direct this. we didn't realize we were coming back tonight to be told yes or no. We thought we would be discussing the changes that we'd made, how we're trying to direct those concerns, and getting feedback from the planning commission to how we could better this, and then go back and work with staff if need be. So we ask that there are all these concerns. If we could kind of spend a little more time and let us know the concerns and give us an opportunity to work with, to table this and let us work further with staff, that would be our request.
Okay, thank you. So just a little bit rebuttal that I spent a great deal of talking with the staff, and the staff had strongly encouraged you not to go on the agenda. And you pushed to be put on the agenda is what I was informed. And when I spoke with the staff, I said, try to tell them not to. And then the response that I got back from the staff is that he really wants to be put on this agenda. And that's the response I have back to working with the staff.
Could I comment one? I know you gave me 90 seconds, but real quick on that. There's a number of people working on this project, and I am directly working with the owner of the property. And I think if he had been asked to give more time, because his goal is to see something very nice happen with their property. I feel like if we had been asked, we would have asked to table it to work further. We weren't asked that question. And I know we're working with an engineering firm and with the developers, but everyone wasn't consulted on that. So I would say in representing the owner of the property to see if this moves forward, I apologize that we weren't consulted, but I would like our position to be taken into consideration.
Mr. Chairman, this is George Yancey again.
Go ahead.
In no disrespect to this gentleman or any of his other associates, I've been a member of this commission for approximately 8 years now, and this is probably the most deficient SUP package that I have seen in that 8-year period. I'm sorry these folks haven't been able to coordinate or arrange to answer the questions. We still don't know whether it's going to be leased or sold by lot. We don't know where the water source is. We don't know where we have other issues in terms of the overlapping between Spotsy and Orange County. I personally have great concern, and there was one particular email from a individual that indicated in the last 3 years, accidents on 522 have increased almost 300%. I can tell you right today, unequivocally, unless there is a decel lane in and out of that property, I will not be in favor of voting for it at any time, given the safety factor. So, you know, I'm adamant about that. I'm sorry. It's nothing personal. It is basically a safety factor for not only our residents, but people coming to Lake Anna to visit and to enjoy the lake itself. Thank you.
We have to.
Well, could I say that the VDOT, the decel lane, all of those things will work into our site plan, and that's our goal, is to have a decel lane here and a safe turning lane. That's all part. And just as you mentioned, Mr. Yancey, a lot of these concerns we had hoped to direct a little bit tonight are looking more for a discussion and not a decision tonight. It was where we thought we were moving forward to.
Well, the procedure.
So understanding everything totally.
Hold on, sir. Hold on.
Could you please table it and give us more time?
Okay, so here's where we are procedurally. Once the application comes forward and we've moved to hear the applicant the county, and the public comment, it goes to a vote. The voters come forward.
He's within his rights to vote tonight.
I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm understanding what you're saying. I will say that whatever we do, it has to go before the Board of Supervisors. So whatever we do is not final. Whatever you think you can do to enhance it, I would strongly suggest enhance it before you get it to the board, or give those answers to the Board of Supervisors when it comes up at that time. I cannot stop a motion once it's on the floor. So now the motion's on the floor to deny this application, and outside of some questions from the commission, that's the proper parliamentary way, or commissioners in their discussion fashion, I'm going to call for the roll call vote. Does any other commissioner have any comments that he or she would like to make?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
Yes.
Chairman, I'm sorry. Echoing what Commissioner Yancey said, the deceleration lane is mandatory, but I'm also concerned about the turn lanes coming off of 522 for these large vehicles. And if I remember correctly, VDOT saw no problem. I don't concur with that. I think we've got a major transportation problem at the entrance with 522. In addition, I assume that the applicant has seen the concerns from LACA, the Lake Anna Civil Association, which laid out some very specific concerns, including the sewage issue, which affects their lake and some 20-year quality control problem for their lake. I have experience with that here at Lake of the Woods because we've spent an inordinate amount of money and time trying to fix that problem here. So I have empathy.
You want to just move to supervisors?
I don't give a fuck. I think we got.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
What you think?
Is there any other,
I usually like to work more with commission.
It's bullshit.
if
They don't want to do
No,
it.
it's
You
not.
make-
y'all would
You know, you're
do me a favor, mute yourself so that you don't interrupt the meeting, I'd appreciate it.
I'm sorry, I thought I was muted. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is there any other commissioner has anything they want to say or comment? So this is Chairman Brooks speaking, just for clarity of who may be listening. So I drove down to this location on Sunday with my son. That's not the important part, but he's 17 and I was letting him drive. And when we got down there, we sat at a location that was within sight distance of this. Traffic is going to be a problem. And I don't know what VDOT was doing. I think VDOT in some way just decided that 522 will take a certain amount of traffic and this wouldn't exceed that maximum traffic, and they didn't care. But getting to my point, I did my own little traffic study, and for 45 minutes of sitting there, there was only a 36-second time frame where something didn't pass me going north or south on 522. And in that passing, there was never less than 4 or 5 cars. Now, the applicant can't fix that, and I understand that. But the applicant will increase that and pulling out. Now, when we went to pull out, I had to tell my son, hold up, let that one go by. Because that is, the traffic speed was probably exceeding the 55 miles an hour. I don't know, I wasn't sitting out there with a radar. So traffic is a problem. This water algae is a concern of mine, and it seems like it's a concern of a lot of folks down there. And I don't know what causes that algae, whether this would increase it or not. And then certainly the sewage. I guess if you got pump and haul stations, it doesn't really matter. Those are the things that I saw that brought to my attention. But I did see in the notes where potentially could bring $245,000 worth of tax dollars. So they did try to address one of my questions in that issue there. So there's a lot of things undone. I just wish the applicant had listened to the county folks when they said slow down a little bit. But since they pushed forward, we must go forward. Outside of any other comments from a commissioner, I'm gonna call for the roll call vote. Again, when Mrs. Thornton calls your name, if you're voting aye, that means you're voting in denial of the project. Nay would mean that you're not. Mrs. Thornton, roll
Mr.
call
Chairman,
vote.
one further question on clarification. Do we need to make a motion to include all the letters and stuff as a matter of record into the minutes?
No, I think they're generally accepted according to the ordinance that we're going by now. But if we want to say that all the notes will be included in the minutes, that's fine. Eric, what are you thinking?
I agree with you, Mr. Brooks, provided that they are included in the minutes.
Right.
That's all that's necessary. They can be inserted into the record, and that can be done later as an act when this commission reviews the minutes for this meeting and approves those minutes to include the comments that go along with it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Thornton, roll call, please.
Mr. Capel,
Aye.
Mr. Yancey,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
Ms. Zellmaker,
Aye.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Aye.
So the motion to recommend denial passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thanks to the applicant and your work. Next thing on our agenda is the work session. We have none. No old business. We have none. Report from the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Johnson. I understand you're on board.
Yes, I am here. I have no report.
Okay. Sandra, do you have a report?
Just briefly, the storage facility special use permit application that I was expecting to be coming forward for the September 3rd meeting will not be coming forward at that time. You had seen communication from me earlier that indicates that pursuant to the motion you made that was made and carried at the August 6th meeting, you will be able to move forward with continuation of special use permit 20-01 from Maypag.
Okay. That concludes your report.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner comments, starting with District 1, Mr. Capel.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Given a few things that we've run into lately, I'm wondering if you would entertain perhaps a work session on two subjects, not tonight, but sometime in the future. The first would be notification of the Planning Commission on impending waivers of the zoning ordinance by the subdivision authority. And Ms. Thornton again, and Eric as well. I'm not picking on you in particular. Just in general, I feel like there ought to be a little more to these waivers than, you know, someone just deciding it's a waiver. I mean, I really don't like that process. This particular application, and Mr. Yancey, you know, laid it out. I mean, these issues with water and emergency access, they were all voiced when this same development company tried to get a zoning change to build more homes there. And then they come right back into the county, and the county waives our authority to review their water and sewer plans, knowing that all of us had concerns about water and sewer. And then to waive safety and emergency issues without any discussion, you know, and I'd like to know whether Mr. Frederick went back to emergency services and to the school to talk about this waiver of the cul-de-sac. I mean, these are kind of critical issues. So, Mr. Chairman, not to belabor it, I think a work session on maybe a little different process, maybe some text amendment, you know, to the ordinance that would at least have us in the loop on some of these waivers, just so there's a little additional check there. I'm not saying we have authority, but I'd like to know about it. The second issue would be the complaints, how the county receives complaints. And this goes back to the MAPAG issue. You know, back in 2016, when we were considering the SUP language change, I asked specifically whether there were complaints, and the answer was no. And, you know, we're a complaint-driven county, so we don't generally enforce ordinance unless someone complains about it. Well, I always assumed we had a complaint process, you know, and I always assumed that if a citizen complained to someone in the county government, that would constitute a complaint. And I spoke about it with Mr. Johnson a little bit, and he brought up some good points. You know, is it really a complaint, or is it someone's just not happy with someone? You know, there's a whole bunch of ways that citizens show up to the supervisors with concerns. But there ought to be some formal complaint process, you know, and I believe that a citizen, if they've voiced a concern to a supervisor, I'll bet if you ask them if they've ever complained to the county, their answer would be yes. I'll bet you anything. If we asked them that, they would say, yeah, well, I talked with my supervisor. Of course I complained, or I talked with my planning commissioner or whoever. So I think a work session, given the fact that we're a complaint-driven county, I think in the future, a work session on exactly how the county receives and documents complaints from citizens would be worthwhile. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yancey, District 2.
Yes, I have a second subject. In this process with the MAPAG and also the current Orange County Resort LLC, I would like to recommend to my fellow commissioners and to staff that when we advertise for public comment, that we require the following things. And these things are normally required when we are in a real meeting on the premises of the Gordon Building. And that is, we require someone to speak for the pros and cons on public comment, their full name, their name and address, and whether or not they are affiliated with any organization or group. And I would like to add to that whether or not they reside in Orange County or an adjoining county or some other locality outside of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
If they give us our address, though, we would know the last, wouldn't we?
Not necessarily. If you look at some of the comments in this last applicant, SUP 2002, there were people in there that were on borderline. They could be Louis or Spotsylvania or otherwise. So
okay, I see what you're saying. Some overlap between Spotsylvania,
Right.
Orange, and Culpeper and Rapidan, and okay, all right, I get you.
Right.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
it's a suggestion. I just think it would help all of us to determine, you know, are we dealing with residents or are we dealing with people outside that may not have a vested interest in Orange County?
Right. Right. Okay. It's the District 3 that I represent. I've got two things. It's kind of funny. We're all thinking together. I think this is kind of, I want to put in writing the concerns that we have of applications when they come to the county when the staff looks at this and say, this is not complete, I want us to have an incomplete stamp or something that sends it back to the applicant and let it be notified so that it's not applicant against staff. They were duly notified that your application is incomplete and is insufficient to go forward. I think that'll help everybody, and then we'll know what we're working with to get there. And that'll cover a lot of bases of what someone thought, then it's actually in writing. The other thing that I want us to pay attention to a little bit is the timeliness of the paperwork that comes to the commission. We cannot get things at 4 o'clock before we get ready to go to the commission meeting. And that's not fussing, that's just saying it's gotta it'll stop staff from having to rush and do things before the meeting. I noticed today even someone made a comment in one of the email threads. It said, I don't know if I can get to the commission that fast. That's true. We can't necessarily get the PowerPoint up for the staff and we need to have these things in a timely. So I think when we do this work session, I would like to have a work session on the organizational structure, how we do business. And that will just incorporate everybody into it, just the organizational structure, how we do business for a work session, just to say, what are we doing and how are we doing it? And I think that'll make it work a whole lot easier for everyone. We can tell that there are some very active citizens that pay attention to a lot of things and take their time and write letters. I've found out over the years that if somebody puts something in writing, they pretty much mean what they're saying. A lot of people say things, don't say I said it, oh, I ain't getting in it, I'll tell you this, blah, blah, blah. But when someone puts their name on it, they're pretty much serious about what they're saying. So we need to make sure we have, and I don't say we're disorganized, I just don't have a better word for it. I just don't have a better word for organizing how we take things in. And I did want to ask Sandra and Eric, is there any legality to say that we won't receive anything within 5 days of the hearing? Can we say that?
I think that's a good point, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you repeat that? Is there any legality to?
To saying that we won't receive anything within 5 days of the hearing date of a matter we're going to hear.
Any new information, I assume
Any
you
new
mean?
information, or just we know that if I sit down and read my packet on Monday, I don't have to worry about anything being interjected between Monday and Thursday.
That's a good question. I can't think of anything against it. That seems like a rule of order that would be within the discretion of the commission. But do you mind if I look into that and report back to you?
No, and just, and if you have some suggestions on how we could do that, if you could note today, just real quickly, because I don't want to hold us here forever.
Mm-hmm.
One commissioner is out of town. I'm out of town because I had to go to get to work in time, and whatever it is, it's just too much too quick. And I would like to see the staff take a break between. Sandra and Tracy have worked themselves tirelessly these last 2 or 3 weeks, trying to keep up, catch up, and get up. That's just how it is. Sandra's tried 3 or 4 times to get me. I've tried 3 or 4 times to get her. It's just, if we can, and it's because of the rush. If we could just stop it 5 days before, would that, is that legal? If that's legal, I'd like to look at something like that.
That rings legal to me, but
right.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Yeah, I'd be inclined, without looking at bylaws or anything of that nature, be inclined to think that you could establish that as part of your operating procedure. But I'll leave it.
But based on your expertise, do you think that's feasible?
I think that if we're meeting every 2 weeks, that makes it a little bit more challenging. But if we say that when we're when something is continued for a meeting 2 weeks hence, if, it's stated at the time the continuation happens that all the new materials must be received by a certain time, then, everybody's on notice that's how you're planning to operate.
Okay,
Just this, when we got the package, last week from the applicants for the RV park, I think I made an assumption without asking specifically whether that was all the material we were expecting. So I thought that was all we were going to be getting for the meeting tonight, but I didn't ask the question about whether they plan to present something new tonight.
right. But if we have a rule, then they would know, that could be in their applicant packet
Right.
too, that everything must be
Right.
this way.
Well, that raises a good question. Sandra, is that presentation that they were going to present tonight available to us?
Yes,
don't know.
when I saw the email, yeah, I mean, I did forward it to you so you would have it in advance. And I think they were prepared, as I mentioned, I think when you moved to this matter, they were prepared to make the presentation. There was another PowerPoint that they were prepared to do this evening. But it arrived in our offices or an email, I should say, by, a little after 4:30 today. I didn't see it till almost 5, and I did forward it out as soon as I had the opportunity to do that.
No disrespect to you and Tracy. That one is on the applicant. It's not on the planning department.
That's the second time they've done it.
Yeah, and I'm just that's why if we put a rule out there, it won't happen because they'll be outside the rule scope and we don't have to worry about, disingenuously hurting somebody. Ms. Joe Maker, you up?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with, your comments and the other commissioners' comments. I would really like to see this complaints process and how that's done. It seems like in a lot of the public comments, especially when it's in regards to noise complaints, that because there is no noise ordinance, their complaints aren't documented anywhere. And there might have been a need for a noise ordinance, but because, there's nothing to back that up, or it's not written in a record anywhere, it falls on deaf ears. And I would really like to see I would like to have a discussion about that. And also the waiver process. I'd been looking through that and didn't really understand the whole process. I know I'm new to this, but I would like to have more discussion about that and understand how that works out. And I feel bad for that applicant. Earlier, it seemed like they were really frustrated. They were making comments. They thought they were muted, that they'll just go to the Board of Supervisors about their special use permit RV park. So I'm kind of interested to see, how that ends up too. But yeah, so I look forward to that next work session. I think that'll be very valuable.
Well, Chairman Brooks, that also brings up a good point. If you recall, in the fireworks SUP, there was an allegation that there was a eagle nesting site in proximity that would be disturbed.
Yes, sir.
How do we have verification if that is fact? There is a federal law that the gentleman cited from the Audubon Society, but nobody has said this is specifically located on Pamunkey Creek at this location, etc. So, anybody can say, there's a snail that's on the endangered species and it would be harmed if we did this. My point being is, whether somebody alleges it, someone has to have proof to provide us that is factual knowledge and is documented by a reliable source.
Right.
I did reach out to that
Go ahead.
email, and they had sent, I guess, a photo to me and some other stuff. So I'll forward that to the rest of you. But they also had like markings on a map where the sightings were or where they thought those nests were located.
Okay, so you had a tad bit more information than we did. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
then.
I reached out to them because I thought that was, you know, something that would, I guess, you know, it was a
Make
terrible.
difference. Right. You complete, Mrs. Zoomaker? Julie?
Can you hear me?
Just got you back. Are you complete or you want?
Okay,
you
sorry. No, I did hear back from them on that with photos, and I know Sandra had reached out to them too, and they responded, but I don't think they responded with the same information.
Right,
It doesn't sound like it, yeah.
yeah. Okay, Mr. Hutchinson, you're up.
I can add nothing further than to the comments the other commissioners have made.
Okay. I would ask that, Sandra, you've heard what we're discussing. Can you kind of put that in some type of format? And I would hope that maybe you can task Tracy with this and come up with those recommendations and some type of presentation to us so we can maybe think about adopting or putting into place.
Yeah, we will work on that. Is that something you would
I would
hope to
say
have
put it
by your
on next-
September 3rd meeting?
Yeah, put it on the agenda. We may not get to it because we can always move it, but put it on the agenda because I think it's important enough for us to handle.
Okay,
I don't know how long it's gonna take us for the September meeting, but I don't want us to just kick that can down the road either.
okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what I need to entertain a motion to do what?
Adjourn.
Yeah, I'll take one.
So moved.
Our next meeting date is September the 3rd. It's been moved by District 5 Hutchinson. Is there a second?
I second that motion, Mr.
Been
Chairman.
seconded by District 2 Yancey. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all, everybody, for their help and participation.
Good night, all.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Good night.